New Year's Eve had always been a night of celebration for Emily. Growing up, her family's tradition was to stay up until midnight, cheering as the clock struck 12, and welcoming the new year with laughter and hugs. This year, however, Emily was alone. Her parents were on a cruise, her friends were scattered at different parties, and she had decided to spend a quiet night in her childhood home. She told herself it would be cozy, a night of movies, snacks, and nostalgia. But as the hours passed, the house began to feel unnervingly empty. The evening began innocently enough. Emily sat curled up on the couch, a blanket draped over her legs, watching the New Year's special on TV. Outside, snow blanketed the yard, and the faint glow of distant fireworks painted the sky. At around 10:30 p.m., as Emily refilled her mug with hot cocoa, she noticed something strange. A single set of footprints trailed across the snowy yard, leading directly to her back door. Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't seen anyone outside all night. The neighborhood was quiet, and most of her neighbors were likely out celebrating. She quickly checked the locks on the doors and windows, reassuring herself that everything was secure. "It's probably just a neighbor cutting through the yard," she muttered, though the explanation didn't feel convincing. Returning to the couch, she tried to shake the unease. But when she glanced at the TV, the broadcast had changed. The New Year's special was gone, replaced by static. Then, through the crackling screen, a faint image appeared, a live feed of her living room. Emily froze. The camera view was from above, as if someone were watching from the ceiling. She looked up but saw nothing unusual. The screen flickered and a figure stepped into the frame. It was tall and thin, draped in tattered black clothing, its face obscured by shadows. The figure turned its head as though staring directly at her through the screen. The power in the house flickered and the TV went black. Emily's breath quickened. She grabbed her phone to call for help, but there was no signal. The house was eerily silent, the only sound the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Then came the knock. A slow, deliberate knock at the front door. Emily's pulse raced. She crept toward the door, her bare feet soundless against the wooden floor. Peering through the peephole, she saw nothing, just the snow-covered porch and the dark night beyond. The knock came again, louder this time. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. No answer. She backed away from the door, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Suddenly, the sound of shattering glass echoed from the kitchen. Emily spun around, her heart hammering in her chest. The back door had been smashed open. Snow and cold air blew into the house, and the footprints from the yard now led directly inside. Grabbing a knife from the kitchen counter, Emily tried to steady her shaking hands. She could hear faint, deliberate footsteps moving through the house. They weren't hurried, they were slow, purposeful, as if the intruder wanted her to know they were coming. "Leave me alone," she screamed, but the footsteps continued. She ran upstairs, slamming her bedroom door and locking it behind her. Her mind raced as she tried to think of an escape. She could hear the footsteps ascending the stairs now, each creak of the wood sending shivers down her spine. In the corner of her room was an old chest, a relic from her childhood. Desperate, she climbed inside, pulling the lid closed just as the bedroom door burst open. Through the tiny crack in the chest, she could see the figure enter. It was even taller than she'd thought, its movements unnaturally jerky, its head tilting back and forth as though sniffing the air. It stopped in the center of the room, turning slowly. Emily held her breath, her pulse pounding in her ears. The figure took a step closer to the chest, then another. It knelt down, its shadow falling over her hiding place. Then it whispered, in a voice so low it felt like it was inside her head. "I know you're here." Emily's blood turned to ice. The lid of the chest creaked as the figure began to lift it. Suddenly, the grandfather clock downstairs struck midnight. The chimes echoed through the house, loud and reverberating. The figure froze, its head snapping toward the sound. For a moment, everything was still. Then, with a guttural hiss, the figure stood and retreated from the room. Emily waited, her breath shallow, until the house fell silent once more. Slowly she climbed out of the chest, her limbs stiff and trembling. The house was empty. The footprints in the snow outside now trailed away from the house, disappearing into the dark forest beyond. When the police arrived hours later, they found no signs of forced entry, no shattered glass, and no footprints. They dismissed her story as stress or an overactive imagination. But Emily knew the truth. And every New Year's Eve after that, she left the house before midnight, never daring to be alone when the clock struck 12. For she had learned the hard way, not all visitors come to celebrate the new year.